here we go. Question 1. The point where the graph crosses the x-axis is called x-axis, the x-intercept, of course. To determine the x-intercept of an equation, what do? We set y equal to 0 and solve for x. I already know this. Question says, determine which equation describes the given graph. Well, what you can do in this case, you can take just 2 points on the graph, find the slope, and then write equation of the line. Or just find the y-intercept and interpret the slope. If you take 2 points on the graph, the first point is 0 and -2. The second point is, let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 and 0. So you have your x-intercept, you have your y-intercept. Now you can easily find the slope, which is 0 minus -2 divided by 4 minus 0, which is 2 over 4 or a half. I have my slope. I have my y-intercept, which is -2. So y is equal to mx plus b. Y becomes a half x plus -2, or y becomes a half x minus 2. Very well, let us take a look at next question. Next question says, hey, you have this graph. This graph is y equals to -1 over x. Well, where did it come from? If you have reciprocal function, this is reciprocal function. This graph behaves like this. This is one of the parent functions, reciprocal. 1 over x, or x times y is equal to 1. You see the graphs, the curves in the first and third quadrant. If you multiply that by negative, your graph has curves in the second and fourth quadrant. So if you know the graph of y over x, which is a reciprocal graph, you can easily identify this graph. Well, y equals to x to the third has the graph like this. You can always use Desmos, double check your graphs. This is x cubed, and if you want to graph this guy, just flip this way. Your next graph is absolute value shifted 4 units downward. So remember that if you have y equals to absolute value of x, the graph was V-shaped graph. All right, here's this graph here. Now take a look at this graph. Your y value is shifted 1, 2, 3, 4 units downward. So your y minus 4, the absolute value of x minus 4. Can use point plotting, double checking the whole thing, but using the interpretation of shifting the translation of graphs helps us to just analyze this a little bit easier. And finally, number 6. Here you have a flat line. This flat line has slope 0. So if you think about y equals to mx plus b, this term is always 0 for a flat line. This is always 0. Your y is equal to b. The equation of any horizontal line is represented by y equals to a number. Any horizontal line, y equals to a number. You get a horizontal line, flat line. In this case, well, here your y is -2, so y is equal to -2 is the answer for this question. Let's go to next page. What do we have here? Well, number 7. Good. Now we are dealing with a vertical line. This line is a vertical line, and no matter what your y is, your x is always fixed. You have x equals to a. This guy represents a vertical line. Vertical line. Like last session that we were talking about the symmetry, axis of symmetry was a vertical line. So x equals to a. Here a is equal to 1, 2, 3 units. X equals to 3 is our vertical line. So x equals to 3. Very well. So question 8 says, which one is a function? So we know that we have a function if it passes the vertical line test, or to each x value, we can only assign one unique y value. X only goes to one y. So if you can find the red flags in each of these, you can easily cross them off. If you have x values with 2 y values associated to it, it means that it's not a function. Not a function. Okay, let's find those. 2 and -1, 2 and 0. Well, here we have the red flag. Also, you can check to see 3 and -1, 3 and 0, another red flag. So this guy is not a function. It's just a relation. Here you have 2 and 2, and then here you have 0, then you have 3, you have 0. Okay, 0, 2, 0, 3. 0 is associated to 2 y values. It's not a function. It doesn't pass vertical line test. If you graph this relation, you have 2 dots on top of each other. It doesn't pass vertical line test. Any vertical line has more than one intersections with that graph. What about this guy? 2, -1, 2, 0, 3, 2, a. I have 2 and 2. So I'm just going to cross those off. Here you have 2, you have a 0, you have a 3, you have a 4. They are all different from each other. They're all unique. So it means that you end up with a function here. All x values are unique. That's the reason. What about 9? The same process. I have 1, I have 2, I have 3, I have 4. So this looks like a good candidate. Check the rest of them. I have 4, which is associated to 1, 2, 3, 4 different numbers. Definitely not a function. You do not have unique x values. X values are repeated here. What about this guy? Here you have 1 and 1 repeated here, not a function, but this guy is a function because my x values are all unique. It is a function. Number 10, domain and range of the function. So remember, the domain is the set of x values that the function is defined. It means that if you punch those x values into the function, you don't get an error. What about the range? Range is the y values that are associated to x values. So range is the set of y values associated to x values. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Here you have y equals to x squared. What's the graph like? This is a quadratic function with a parabola. This is a parabola, opens up, and this is the graph. So to identify x values for the domain, we can look at the shadow of the graph on x-axis. The shadow on x-axis. This graph continues from left, from right. So these are all acceptable x values. All real line. This is my domain. This is your domain. Well, what about the range? I have another color. Use this guy. So take a look at the graph. The shadow of the graph on y-axis gives you the range. Okay, the shadow on y-axis from left, from right, this just continues going up because this graph continues. This is your graph. Just continues. This is your range on y-axis. So on x-axis, you see all real lines, real numbers are taken. This is my domain. Domain is R. Okay, so here the domain is R, the domain is R, the domain is R. It says the domain is x greater than equals to 0. This is not definitely the answer, so I'm going to just cross this off. Now take a look at the range. Range starts from 0 and goes to positive infinity. From 0 to positive infinity. There is no y down here. The graph is not defined here. The graph is defined from 0 to positive infinity. Okay, so for sure, it doesn't include the negative values. You can cross this off. It doesn't include the negative value. Cross this off. The only answer is this answer. Very well. Question 11. Okay, 11 is super easy. We just have a line, increasing line. This is just an increasing line. It's defined everywhere from left to right. It's an increasing line. So if you want to graph this guy, the graph is going to be like this. If you want to find x-intercept, well, x is equal to -3. And if you want to find y-intercept, it is 3. So this is your graph. This is the graph of this line that you have. So if you look at the shadow of the line on x-axis, since it continues, you see all x values are taken from -infinity to positive infinity. So let's take a look at this question. Okay, this is fine, this is fine, this is fine, this is not fine. It says, hey, the domain is restricted. We don't have any restriction on the domain, -infinity to positive infinity. What about the range? To find the range, look at the shadow of the graph on y-axis. Here, here, and it continues down, it continues up, and as you can see, it's -infinity to positive infinity. So range includes all real numbers. It's not restricted. So the only answer is A. Find x-intercept and y-intercept. Nice. We have algebra. To find x-intercept, set y equal to 0 and isolate your x. So 0 is equal to 1/2 x plus 11. Bring 11 to the other side. Here you can multiply everything by 2 to get rid of the fraction as well. If you don't like denominators, get rid of the denominators. If you multiply everything by 2, you get 0 equals to 2 times 1/2 x plus 2 times 11. You get 0 equals to x plus 22, or x is -22. Again, if you have fraction, if you have equation, multiply both sides by that denominator, get rid of the denominator. Well, finding y-intercept is super easy. If this guy is equal to 0, y is 11. So -22 and 0, 0 and 11. This is our answer. Next one. Well, to find x-intercept, set y equal to 0. When y is 0, you get 5x minus 10 times 0 equals to 30. This is 0. So 5x is 30. 5 is multiplied by x. The opposite operation is division. Divide both sides by 5, and x becomes 6. So this is my x-intercept, 6 and 0. By looking at the answers, you can say that, hey, the only answer that satisfies the x-intercept is this, but eventually we need to find y-intercept as well. To find y-intercept, set x equal to 0. When x is 0, 5, 0 minus 10y is 30. So negative 10 times y is 30, or y is 30 divided by negative 10. You have a positive divided by negative. The outcome is negative. You get y equals to negative 3. 0 and negative 3 is your y-intercept. There we go. We love algebra. Question 14 says, determine slope of the line passing through these 2 points. So we know that slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So label these x1, y1, x2, y2. So 7 minus negative 11. Don't forget to use parentheses because your number is a negative number. Divided by x2 is 2 minus x1, which is negative 7. So you get 7 plus 11 divided by 2 plus 7. Guys, you cannot cancel out 7 and 7. It's a no. You get 18 divided by 9, which is 2. This is the slope of your line passing through these 2 points. Let's take a look at next page. Question 15 says, determine the slope and y-intercept of the graph x. Good one. X minus ty equals to 5. So to find slope and y-intercept, we need to write this in terms of mx plus b. We need to isolate y on one side, okay? Here you have x and 10y attached together by subtraction. Somehow we have to get rid of this. So what you can do, here you can subtract x from both sides. You get negative 10y equals to minus x plus 5. Now to get rid of negative 10, divide both sides by negative 10. So negative 10y divided by negative 10 becomes negative x over negative 10 plus 5 over negative 10. Negative 10 and negative 10, they cancel out each other, the common factor. So you're left with y equals to negative divided by negative is positive. X divided by 10, it means that you have 1 over 10 times x. So this is 1/10 x. And here you have plus negative a half. So compare this with y equals mx plus b. M is 10, b is negative a half. One-tenth and negative a half. This is our answer here. Doing pure algebra. Okay, perfect. Question 16. Determine which 2 equations have graphs that are perpendicular to each other. Perpendicular, it means that their slopes, if you multiply their slopes, it is equal to -1. So we need to find the slope of the first line, slope of the second line, multiply them together. If it's equal to -1, then we say that, hey, those lines are perpendicular to each other. So slope of the first line is 3. The slope of the second line is also 3. They're equal to each other. This guy says, hey, these 2 lines are parallel to each other, not perpendicular. So these are parallel. So it's not the answer. Take a look at B. It says slope is 3, slope is -3. If you multiply these two, it's -9. M1, M2 is -9. It's not -1. No relation. We don't have any relation here. It's not the answer. What about this case? It says M1 is 3 and M2 is a third. If you multiply 3 and a third, you get 1. You do not get -1. There is no relation between these two. Okay, finally, M1 is 3, M2 is -1/3, M1. M2 is -1. So this is your answer. These two lines are perpendicular to each other. If you use Desmos, double check the work, you see they are perpendicular to each other. Question 17. Determine the equation of the line passing through this point and parallel to this line. Well, when they are parallel to each other, they have the same slope. Thank you very much. M is 2. You already have your slope. You already have a point. So y minus y1 equals to m, x minus x1. Y minus -4 is equal to 2, x minus -4. So we get y plus 4 equals to 2 times x plus 4. Y plus 4, if you distribute 2 into parentheses, we get 2x plus 2 times 4, which is 8. Now, if you subtract 4 from both sides, y becomes 2x plus 4. So 2x plus 4 is the answer. Very well. So this guy says now lines are perpendicular to each other. Well, first we need to find the slope of this line. If you add y to both sides, y becomes 2x minus 3. So slope of this line is 2. Since they are perpendicular to each other, you are building a new line. It's not the same line. It has a different slope. What's the relation between these slopes? If you multiply them together, it must be equals to -1. So the second slope for this line that you try to write must be m2 -1/2. This is the slope that you're going to work with. Also, you have a point on this line. So use y minus y0 equals to, or just y1 equals to m, x minus x1. x1 is 7, y1 is 7, and slope is -1/2. Just plug those in. Y minus 7 equals to -1/2 x minus 7. Don't leave it like this. Guys, simplify that. You have a denominator. My suggestion for you is to multiply both sides by 2 to get rid of this denominator. So if you multiply left-hand side by 2, you get 2 times y minus 7 equals to. If you multiply 2 by this fraction, 2 and 2, they cancel out. You end up with a negative sign or -1 in front of x minus 7. Distribute 2 into parentheses, you get 2y minus 14 equals to -x plus 7. So let's see what do we have. If we bring all x and y's to one side, all constants to the other side, you get 2y plus x equals to 14 plus 7 which is x plus 2y equals to 21. So now we have functions. Two functions are given to us. Question says, hey, find the difference between these two functions when x is 0. Guys, this is not multiplication. The meaning of f minus g evaluated at x is f of x minus g of x. It means that you have to subtract the definition of functions. So the first function is x squared plus x minus 3 subtraction. The second function has two terms. Don't forget parentheses. X squared minus 16. This is the meaning of the subtraction between two functions. You can either write it this way and plug in 0 to evaluate, or you can find f of 0, which is -3, find g of 0, which is -16, subtract these two. You get -3 minus -16, or -3 plus 16, which is 13. Either the definition of the subtraction or just calculate each one of them separately and then do the subtraction yourself. Both of them give you the exact same result, no matter if you define the function or just calculate each one of them separately. 20 says, well, just divide them. Again, guys, this is not multiplication, not multiplication. F divided by g at x is defined as f of x over g of x. That's the definition of this new function, new object that you're trying to create here. So you can calculate f of -4, you can calculate g of -4 and do the division. F of -4 divided by g of -4. What is f of -4? If I plug in -4 here, f of -4, I get -4 squared minus 4 minus 3, 16 minus 7 or 9. So this guy becomes 9 divided by g of -4. G of -4 becomes 16 minus 16, which is 0. 9 divided by 0 is undefined. If 0 is on the denominator, it's undefined. If 0 is on the numerator, it is 0. Do not confuse these cases. 0 over 9 is 0. But 9 over 0 is undefined. Know the difference between these two. 9 over 0 is always undefined. If 0 is on the numerator, the outcome is 0.